Let's start the recording, please. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sovryn's 67th community call. Uh, in this call, we'll discuss the recent BOS token SIP as raised by Sacro, and we'll have an open AMA with pre-collected questions. We don't have a lot of time here, only 1 hour. Let's start. Recently, I think last Friday, longtime community member Sakura has raised a SIP regarding the 10% loss token allocation the Sovereign will retain from
Avalon Foundation announced it would begin investing in meme coins late last year. As
sorry, Kiri, thank you. These tokens are to be retained from a token standard that Sovereign will develop and mint the BOS token, retaining 10% of them. This SIP was rejected. It was raised as a 70-20 SIP and only got 64% of support. A lot of community members noticed that the opposing addresses belong mostly to team members, and have wondered why is the team against this SIP? Yago, I know you have a lot to say on this topic, so why don't you take the stage?
Yeah, hello. Are you asking me for an answer to that question?
No, we're not in the AMA part. We'll get to that later. I know that you have had comments regarding the SIP being premature, and I wondered if you'd like to make those comments here.
I posted my thoughts to the forum under the topic SIP 85 thoughts. I had comments on a number of aspects of the SIP. With regards to the SIP being premature, I think it was premature in two ways. First of all, I think the SIP text itself was published only a few hours before the SIP went out, which, unless there is some kind of emergency situation or a very clear reason why the SIP needs to be published only briefly before, I think is inappropriate and should be rejected just on the basis of that merit. I more fundamentally said that BitcoinOS, in terms of the token distribution of BOS token, its allocation, vesting schedules, as relates to the various teams that are developing BitcoinOS, has not been finalized and is still a matter of discussion. I think the input from the Sovryn community is an important part of that discussion, and I welcome it. I think making a final decision in isolation and out of context of everyone else who is involved in the BOS project is, it just doesn't make sense. It's not within the context of the broader scope, and I don't think that's the appropriate or responsible way that we as Sovryn should go about it.
I understand. There are a lot of questions in the in the collected questions document regarding what does the team want. From what you say now, I understand that what the team will want is very much tied into what's right for the everybody contributing to BitcoinOS. Is that correct?
I don't know who you mean by team. I don't know who you're referring to. There's people who are receiving grants from Sovryn, who we typically refer to as the team, right? I don't think they have a collective view on this. I didn't participate in SIP 85. I wasn't one of the voters. Um, and there's a whole bunch of people who could collectively be called the team working on Bitcoin OS, and I don't think they have a view. In fact, I'm explicitly saying that no view yet has been formed around the distribution of tokens, including issues like vesting.
Okay. So, I'm gonna get to the AMA part. But I'm just gonna read the questions as collected by our community leads in the different.
Before you get into the questions, I'd like to read something. Do you mind if I share my screen? Because I didn't realize. I didn't realize we were going to be jumping directly into this. I thought we were going to have a normal community call. But let me share my screen. So
Stop.
what I'm sharing now is the post that I posted on my thoughts around SIP 85. And before I get into this, when I was 16, I had a girlfriend who I thought was really, really hot. And she constantly kept telling me how fat she was. And eventually, she managed to persuade me. Um, and then our relationship didn't last very long. I started to see her as unattractive. Now, there's a post here by Danio, and I think it's a very good post. I think it is probably a pretty good reflection of how a lot of people within the community are thinking, and I think it's worth. I try to think. I try. I think we should pay attention to how different people in the community are thinking, and I think his thoughts here are probably fairly reflective. So I'll sort of skim through it quickly. So he says that he feels that there is a growing disconnect between the avid Sovryn community and the people who are spending most of their time working on the project. And it's frustrating to see why concerns are brushed off, not taken seriously, and decisions are taken or the outlook is vague. And then he provides a viewpoint from his view as an investor. So in 2021, he describes decentralization in finance is absolutely necessary for freedom. Bitcoin, the ideal network for that. Bitcoin L2 is not yet ideal. Rootstock is the best shot, and Sovryn is being built. And it launches into a hype market and then drops 90%. And I think this thing with the drops 90% is going to be a bit of a recurring theme here. And I think overall is a recurring theme in a lot of the discussion that we see, and sort of like is the background mood for a lot of the conversation. So 2022, 2023, Rootstock's limitations become clear. Also, there isn't any uptake of DeFi by Bitcoiners or Bitcoin DeFi. But Sovryn is the biggest DeFi on Rootstock, and certainly the biggest Bitcoin DeFi. I won't put words in his mouth, but Sovryn is the biggest DeFi on Rootstock, which is still small. And building continues, the DApp and website get better. Then Zero is launched, awesome idea, but the execution is not suitable. I don't know why the execution is not suitable, but let's continue. So the result is that Zero has no more than 100 credit lines for 3 years. And then 2024, DeFi on Bitcoin is starting to be seen. Bob is developed. There's what I think here is, quoting me, stand in the river of money swooshing over from Ethereum. But Bob is still Ethereum, and Spice is being handed out, but people don't know what Spice is. Batocracy voting between other sovereign chains and Rootstock is unclear. And then he points out also runes are coming, runes are better than ordinals, I think this means BRC20. They'll be traded on Sovryn. Power is Arun, but Power doesn't perform well. But BitcoinOS is starting, and the first announcements are made. Cool. We will build an L2 that will enable us to perfect Sovryn over time. And DeFi on Bitcoin will finally make sense. And not just DeFi, other things. All right. So then slowly the news creeps in that BOS will be the financial operating system of the future, not Sovryn itself, which may be just a DeFi layer. All right, fair point. BOS is bigger and can't be captured by Sovryn alone. BOS needs a token. Okay, it's a mechanism and architecture for ZK proofs. That makes sense. Cooperation with Cardano is announced. The long conceptualized future is becoming real, but ADA is pumping and SOV drops. And then in a recent community call, we hear that that there are other chains with DeFi applications that are likely coming to BOS, so it's no longer attractive for Sovryn to be a DeFi platform. Here, I'll just keep it verbatim for now. But we are staking, I think this is what he means, but we have stakes for building a DeFi layer on Bitcoin and an L2 called Rootstock that's not being used, and now Sovryn isn't interested in being a DeFi platform on BOS. Well, we'll see. We got a bitocracy, and we can vote for Sovryn's future. The Sovryn community, and in particular the long-standing supporters and stakers, will receive 10% share. And the investors are going to receive part of their share for carrying the torch of freedom and DeFi on Bitcoin. And the Sovryn team needs resources. So 2% will go to the treasury, 8% will go to the stakers. Yes, let's make it happen. But Sovryn stakers aren't to be trusted. Don't we need long-term locks and vesting periods for the BOS token? Just like other founders, that does not seem appropriate. So let's take a vote. The vote requires 70% approval, 60% support, so it fails. So then maybe we need a vesting compromise. After all, then Yago, after not having participated in the discussion, suddenly proposes using BOS tokens as part of the Sovryn treasury, in the same way as Michael Saylor. And so what are we Sovryn investors supposed to make of all of that? It feels like we're being taken for a ride. We're not being trusted. And at the same time, we're being hailed as the only working DAO. Something feels way off. And then it continues. Isn't it understandable that there is frustration and that the vague snippets for the way forward are absolutely not satisfying? Okay, so why do I read this? Because I think it's a good description of how a lot of people are thinking about this project and how they feel about this project. And the description is extremely one-sided, in my view. It completely skips over the fact that we built on Rootstock, which was an extremely hard place to build. Not just the entire Rootstock ecosystem, but what is today still the largest Bitcoin DeFi trading platform, at least. Probably also the largest DeFi lending platform. We managed to innovate on a lot of technologies. We brought in tens of thousands of users. We did billions of dollars in trades, hundreds of millions of dollars in lending. None of that appears in this description. This is, in my mind, a description of my very hot girlfriend telling me that she's fat. And I feel like we do that a lot. And I feel like the reason we do that, to a great extent, is because of this SOV drops 90%. And if the SOV token is not successful, then the project isn't successful. And I think another theme that we see frequently is also what appears at the top here, which is this growing disconnect between the avid investors and those spending most of their daytime working on the project. And in the questions that were provided to me, there was a section called Sentiment where I've highlighted a section here. I don't know if you guys can see this. Yeah, I think you can. Where it says there's also concern that the core team is the same as the BitcoinOS team, which makes people worry about a deep conflict of interests and a shifting focus away from Sovryn. So I think there are two challenges here, which have nothing to do with the SIP, but are such an important background for this SIP. That talking about the SIP in isolation of these things is meaningless and silly. There's a deep sense, not that everyone has, but that I hear frequently, of this idea that there's conflicts of interest, that there's a deep disconnect between the people working on the project and the people who are stakers in the project. And I've been hearing this for 3 years now, at least, probably more. I don't think the reality bears that out. I think the fact is that I'm still here, that the people who are building are still here, and we're trying to do what we can, just like you guys are still here, to make Sovryn a success. And a lot of it, pretty much every time this kind of thing comes up, it's a very vague accusation, which frequently has, only sort of waves towards, directionally towards some kind of actual claim. So, for example, it says here, there's also a concern that the core team is the same as the BitcoinOS team. We all know that's not true. We've answered that question a million times. It's just simply not the case at all. And then there is this deep worry of conflicts of interests and that they're shifting focus away from Sovryn. But clearly, everything that we're doing here has to do and is related to Sovryn. And there is another example of this, I think in Sovryn's Bitterest Victory by Lactarius. Where he describes this bitocratic event represents a significant demonstration of plutocracy, which is effectively a different way of describing the same supposed conflict of interest. There's no conflict of interest. Everyone who is an SOV staker wants the same thing. They want SOV to do well, they want to make money, they want to see Sovryn succeed. Ideally, all three of those are aligned. I think in this particular SIP there was a question about whether or not those are aligned. I'll get to that in a second. So there's no conflict of interest, right? What people are interpreting as a conflict of interest is a difference of opinion. Some people, apparently primarily those closer to the actual work being done on a day-to-day basis, were concerned that if Sovryn goes and unilaterally makes a decision in a vacuum without taking into account any of the desires, interests, requirements of the broader Bitcoin OS, that what we might end up having is a significant conflict within Bitcoin OS before it even launches. I think that's a very reasonable concern. I think if that concern happens, it can be extremely detrimental to the potential for Sovryn to see value in this stake. We're not the only stakeholder here. We don't get to make unilateral decisions and decide whatever we want. And the people who are paying attention carefully, I think, voted on that basis. And I say this on the basis of the conversations I've had with people who've told me that they voted. So is that a conflict of interest? No. That is a difference of opinion, an extremely legitimate difference of opinion. And with regards to the question of whether or not this is plutocratic, no, this is bitocratic. Bitocracy was designed with the explicit intention to give people who are more deeply engaged, more deeply involved, staking for a long term, a bigger share of the vote. Why? Because it's likely that their opinion matters, and maybe even matters more. Okay, so that is, we've all known this. All of us. Every single one of us, when we signed up to Bitocracy, this is what we signed up to. We've discussed this a million times, and it's exactly the way that the system has always worked. But every time we have a vote, there's people on either side of the vote. This is why we try to have votes only when there's a high degree of consensus, because controversial votes are corrosive to the community and create politicization of the bitocratic process, which we don't want. It's not designed to be a political system. It's not a democracy. It's designed to be a system which achieves a high level of consensus. And when we start introducing controversial votes, then we inevitably create a set of people, and this might be a very large set of people, it might be from a numerical perspective the majority. We create a set of people who feel like they are unheard, that they're unempowered, and that when their proposal has been rejected, that they themselves and their ideas have been rejected. That's not what's happened, right? What has happened is a decision had to be made. In this case, I think the decision was rushed, and so a number of people voted against it. That is an extremely legitimate and I would say a huge win for Bitocracy. But it creates the sense of people being unheard. Well, I'm here to tell you everyone is heard. I read the forums. I listen to the community. We've got here a set of questions that have been provided around this AMA. But the more we politicize the Bitocracy, the more people are going to feel like it's a political process. And we've seen time and time again, political processes, they create sort of this almost tribalistic sense of, of, of teams, right? Of differing interests. And they tend to interpret differences of opinions as differences of interest. And they tend to, as a result, especially in sort of, we sort of are cargo culting the politics that we see in the rest of the world. People assume that if someone disagrees with me, it's because they're stupid or because they're evil. I don't think that's the case. So my sense is that people have been holding and staking SOF for a very long time. Not just for financial and economic reasons. They're doing it because they believe in the mission. But they also have financial and economic interests. And they're not happy with their financial and economic interests. They feel like SOV is not at the price that they want it to be. And they would very much like to see an opportunity to see a return. And they see the BOS token as an opportunity to make this return and possibly to do it very, very quickly. And that is their interest. It's a perfectly legitimate interest. I haven't taken a position on this, and I'm happy to fight to try and see how we can achieve this or any better financial result for SOV holders, SOV stakers. I'm an SOV holder, I'm an SOV staker. But if we can't, that doesn't the easy the straightest line is not always the most obvious path is not usually even the most successful path. And in this particular case, there was a significant risk to people's ability to see a return on the very BOS tokens that they want to see a return on. So with that, I'm going to try and go through these questions as quickly as possible because I also want to leave some time for an open discussion for people to ask questions live. So the first few questions I can answer pretty quickly because the question is, how should the distribution look in your view? Is the team planning to propose a next distribution SIP? Will the founders and team token vesting get excluded? I can answer this very quickly. I don't have a view yet. I'm in the process of forming one. Is the team planning to propose a next SIP? No, the team is not currently planning to propose a SIP until we have the information that we need. Will the founders and team token vesting schedule, will team token or vesting get excluded? No. Some team members expressed concern about the SOV stakers dumping on day one their BOS shares. Let me make this bigger so everyone can see. Some team members expressed concern about SOV stakers dumping on day one their BOS share if they get them all liquid. How can something like this happen if their VP is highly concentrated in the rest of the community are thousands of SOV stakers who get a smaller share of that 8%? I don't know which team members expressed this specific concern, but it is a concern that tokens will be unlocked if that's not in line with the way that they're being distributed to other people. It's a concern. If it's not a concern for the team, it's a concern for anyone who's looking at BitcoinOS from the outside. Can you explain why SOV stakers have no cost basis for the BOS allocation? Because no one is being expected to purchase BOS tokens. What will the BOS tokenomics look like? Will the BOS tokenomics, when will the BOS tokenomics be finalized, and what steps are being taken to ensure clarity, transparency, and fairness? There's an effort to finalize things now. Part of that includes the conversation that is happening within Sovryn, and in all likelihood will continue to happen within Sovryn. How much of BOS will be liquid at the beginning? This will likely be decided just shortly before mainnet. The SIP got 64% of the votes in favor. Shouldn't it be considered accepted under the past proclamation SIP standards? It's not the past proclamation SIP standards. Proclamation SIPs should be require 5% quorum and 50% or a simple majority, a 50% majority. A SIP that went out with a different set of quorum requirements cannot be reversed sort of arbitrarily. If the community wants to run a new SIP, if anyone wants to run a new SIP with different requirements around it, they're welcome to do that. I would suggest, however, referring back to the thread that I wrote. I actually think that the requirements here were appropriate. I think Sacro made a good decision in setting these requirements, and I also think that we shouldn't be taking votes on this particular question until we've collected the required information and have discussed it with enough length that everyone can understand what's being discussed, what's at stake, and who the different stakeholders are. How can we be assured that SOV stakers will not receive worse deals compared to other stakeholders? You can't be, right? That is just the fact of the thing, right? No one's offering you any assurance. It's just a fact. SOV, right? Sovryn is receiving more than anyone else, by far. It's a constant point of contention and friction. It's going to probably be a problem when marketing BitcoinOS more broadly, because people are going to ask why so many tokens are going to Sovryn. People are already asking why so many tokens are going to Sovryn. The Cardano community are saying, well, we're bigger than Sovryn. Shouldn't we receive more than Sovryn? But the fact of the matter is that Sovryn's receiving more than anyone else, despite the fact that it introduces frictions. And partly because we fought for this. 7. Are there safeguards in place to prevent founders or early contributors from dumping tokens in a way that could negatively affect Sovryn community vesting tokens? I think this refers to BOS tokens. The safeguards in place, so to speak, right? To the reason it is anticipated that Sovryn, like other founding participants, will have some kind of vesting schedule is for this reason exactly. With the core team also leading BitcoinOS, how are you ensuring that Sovryn continues to get their retention resources? So the core team is not leading BitcoinOS. I'm deeply involved in helping to lead the work on BitcoinOS, but I am not the core team. Most of the people working on Sovryn are not engaged in BitcoinOS, except to the extent that Sovryn is assisting BitcoinOS. What measures are being taken to improve transparency and build trust with the community, especially given recent concerns about slow communication and unclear priorities? I have a much longer answer to this than I think I can give right now, but the reality is that I think Sovryn is better informed about what's happening in BitcoinOS than pretty much anyone, like any other group, and that transparency, in my view, is not the problem. I've explained why in the past. I'm not going to get back into this. What is, I can, if someone asks me about it again, what is the roadmap of Sovryn? Where are we heading now? This is an excellent question. I'm going to answer that we don't know. Who decides? Who's supposed to decide where Sovryn is supposed to go? I am currently in the process of writing a post around this question exactly. My view is that we actually do need to be focused on exactly this kind of question. And we need to be thinking about it. And if you look at the forum, most of the conversation is not about that. It's I have proposed that the reason it's a complicated question is because I think we are at a very the reality is that crypto is changing dramatically. The technology that made sense for Sovryn when it was building on Rootstock doesn't make sense anymore. Rootstock doesn't make sense anymore. Building on EVMs, I think, frequently doesn't make sense anymore. And if we want to be building for the future, we need to build a system which is going to be adaptable for changes. We have a highly decentralized community project, which makes making decisions difficult. The kinds of conversation that we're having, the answers that I'm giving now are relatively short. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of context that is missing in these answers. If we were to go and build another, and I described this previously, if we just launch another rollup, we're competing with Merlin, we're competing with Bitcoin Squared, we're competing with Bob, we're competing with CoreDAO. What is the new thing that we're offering? I don't think that that's the way forward. Some people do. The Danio thinks probably that that's what we should be doing. I think that we should be focused on building a machine that is able to build and launch projects that operate independently of Bitocracy, and that we should utilize Bitocracy as a decision-making tool for launching those projects. But there's a much longer conversation, and I'm going to move on. We can discuss it more if people ask about it. There's a perception that Sovryn's progress has been slower than expected. What steps are being taken to accelerate the development and align with community expectations? None. This is an incorrect perception. Right now, Sovryn is maintaining the DeFi systems that it has built. It is not launching new ones. It is working to make sure that BOS is a success in the near term, which is a huge win from Sovryn's perspective, from a financial perspective, from a technology perspective, and opens up new avenues for us to develop on. We're not slower than expected. We're much faster than expected. We continue to lead. BOS is well ahead of any other project that is trying to build in this space. So what steps are being taken to accelerate the development in line with community expectations? None. What are we trying to accelerate here? We're trying to accelerate right now BitcoinOS. That's our focus. Why? For all of the reasons I just mentioned. With the integration of Cardano and other blockchains coming to BOS in the form of rollups, how will SOV and the Sovryn layer distinguish itself as a leading Bitcoin DEX and DeFi platform? In my view, it shouldn't. 13. How does BitcoinOS differ from Egg layer Polygon is working on? It's a totally different system. BitcoinOS is a system which provides the ability to perform compute in Bitcoin. Egg layer is a interoperability layer for rollups built on Polygon. The only thing that they have in common is providing an interoperability layer between systems within their respective ecosystems. So they're totally different things. They will probably I mean, we could imagine AgLayer being integrated into BitcoinOS, but these are two totally different systems. Can the 10% of BOS allocation to be staked on Sovryn's BitcoinOS node collect and distribute fees to stakers? Yes. Potentially, yes. Will this be worth doing? I don't know. So there's currently work being done on staking mechanisms within BitcoinOS. They're far from being finalized, and I don't think that we should right now commit to keeping the BOS, staking the BOS, and distributing the yield. That might be a very, very profitable thing to do. It might not be. I don't think we know enough yet. I'll summarize and say this. We are at a crossroads as a project right now. And what people want, I think, is a sense of, okay, this is exactly what Sovryn is going to be in the future. I have a view of what that should be. Right? And I can look to try and explain that view and fight for what that view is, but I don't get to decide. And I don't want to be a politician. Right now, the sentiment that I'm feeling, my personal feeling, is that the sentiment is difficult, that the trust in me, or just generally in people working on Sovryn, is quite low, and that a lot of people just really want to get their hands on BOS tokens. In that environment, spending a lot of time trying to figure out what the future of Sovryn is not what I want to spend my time doing. I don't want to be a politician. So what I'm focused on is trying to build BOS and turn it into a success. I think if we do that, first of all, it will be very, very successful for Sovryn. And beyond that, I think it can help change the sentiment. And beyond that, I think there's a huge set of opportunities that are available to Sovryn in the Bitcoin DeFi sphere and beyond by building on BOS. But we need to restructure Sovryn and the way it operates in order for that to be successful. I have thoughts on what that restructuring would look like. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but people might have questions on anything else. And so I've left here 20 minutes and we can have a broader discussion.
Matria, you've unmuted yourself. Do you wish to speak? I'll take that as an accidental unmute. We have a few questions here in the chat, but I invite anybody who wants to speak up to unmute and speak up.
There are a few questions here.
Yeah.
All right. Yago, you just said we should dump. I don't care about profit now. I don't know if that doesn't seem to be a question, but I certainly never said we should just dump. But if you want to, go ahead. You guys are server muted because there's okay. Don't we decide where we're going? Didn't we decide we're going to be the first roll up on BOS? No, we didn't decide that. It was we've been talking about the sovereign layer and we've been building the sovereign layer, and actually it's getting a system that we could use as a sovereign layer, which is to say an EVM chain that rolls up to Bitcoin, is nearing completion and is getting better all the time. But let's say we launch that. Then what? All right. So for that to be successful, we need to build an ecosystem for it, right? So how are we going to do that? So we need talented people who are going to develop, who are going to make decisions. Like, for example, is it going to have its own token, or is it going to use SOV? Is it going to provide token incentives? We're going to need talented business development people or salespeople to go out and attract projects to build on it. We'll need to have a unique proposition. We'll need to decide what that unique proposition is. We'll need to market it. right? We'll need to have the capital to do all of those things. That potentially means raising capital. So we could decide, all right, look, we're going to take the entire Sovryn team and we're going to put that entire team, all of our resources on that mission. And maybe that makes sense. But has that discussion happened in depth? No. Has a decision been made around it? Certainly not by Bitocracy. And I think that the sense across the people who are actually working on the project at this point in time is that that is not the most valuable thing that we should be doing. So, so people are asking for, people frequently will say we don't have enough transparency. Well, this is transparency, right? We can have a very deep discussion around, what is the market out there right now? What are the opportunities? And I think we should have that discussion. But then that in and of itself is a very, very deep investment that most people don't want to make. So perhaps Bitocracy and transparency and decentralized decision making around those kinds of decisions isn't the best solution. In which case, what is? Well, I have some ideas, and if someone asks me about them, I'll answer. But the saying that the problem is a lack of transparency, or that decisions have been made or not made, this is simply not a good way of analyzing the question. Will Sovryn products be available on BOS Network upon BOS Network launch? In the current state of things, no. We could launch very easily a rollup, put Sovryn products onto that rollup, and that would be that, right? We could just launch a new EVM and put those products onto a rollup that rolls up to Bitcoin and is part of the BOS network. Maybe that's extremely valuable to do. It's relatively easy to do. Maintaining it is more expensive and more difficult. Growing it is much more expensive and more difficult. So, is that what we should be doing? All right. So, Anep is asking me for my ideas. So, I've actually been writing something here. I haven't published this, but I'm going to share some of it now. My view is I'm going to read to you guys what I've written. I'm not yet happy enough to publish it, but I'm happy enough to read it to you. All right. So, Farseer from Bitocracy to Futarchy. Sovryn's Bitocracy has performed well. I know of no better designed DAO, a system of governance designed to empower the most involved and committed long-term thinkers. I believe it has incentivized and accomplished that exactly. I think even the last vote that we had, actually, is a good example of Bitocracy working exactly as designed. However, 4 years in, and despite this impressive success, I think 3 related disadvantages of Bitocracy have become apparent. 1. It is too ambiguous what exactly should be voted on. What even should we be voting on? Right? Should we have... I'll get into that in a second. It encourages decision by committee, which is always suboptimal. And 3, it is mistaken for democracy and creates the same factious infighting that all voting encourages. Broadly, I think all 3 of these problems are examples of politics. Bitocracy is a system that introduces political thinking and behaviors into the decision-making process. The system of voting it employs has fostered an often toxic environment of politics. Those who lose votes often feel unseen, unheard, and unempowered. Ultimately, they feel rejected. How can we solve these problems? How can we build a depersonalized, depoliticized, decentralized mechanism of robust and profitable decision-making? Can we go beyond Bitocracy? I believe we can, and that the key to doing this is to develop a system that is at once both more and less decentralized than Bitocracy. More decentralized. How can something be more decentralized? We can have a system where anyone with knowledge should be able to participate in governance. Let's get the world's best thinkers, human and otherwise, involved. Create a system that aggregates the best thinking and the best information and rewards good decision making as directly as possible. But also less decentralized. Execution The actual execution of tasks should be left to highly empowered individuals and teams to act courageously, take innovative risks, and be incentivized to succeed. If the best executors are often dictators, so be it. All right, so I'm gonna do a little bit of interpretation of what I just read. My view is that Bitocracy currently inhabits a uncomfortable middle ground. It is highly decentralized and well designed for long-term thinking, but it doesn't have a good way of aggregating highly informed thinkers in new spheres. If we're thinking about DeFi, or if we're thinking about what the future of crypto is going to look like, or if we're trying to make a decision about where best to invest our time, we don't have a system which actually inherently brings in people, new people who are going to have valuable information for us. I think there is a way of doing that. The other problem with it is I, for example, as someone who has been spending a lot of time trying to build on Sovryn, I don't feel particularly empowered in Sovryn. Like, I can't just make decisions. I can't just decide, okay, guys, I've done the analysis. This is, in my view, the best thing for us to move forward on. Let's just go and do that. I need to convince other people. I need to go through a process of persuasion. Frequently, I won't know what the fuck I'm talking about because the most exciting opportunities are vague at the beginning. Like BitcoinOS, as an example. I still don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And if I, you know, tried to persuade us to invest a lot of capital into it, I would have had to have all kinds of arguments that I don't want to get into in a political way. It's not a way that is attractive to builders to build. Um, so what I think we need to do is we need to create a system which empowers people to go out and build as they see fit and tries to make a bet on who those best people are or what the best opportunities are. And I think the way that we do that is through a system that I've already built a demo of in the past, which is called Futarchy. And what Futarchy does is imagine a governance system where there's no voting at all. Instead, we let markets predict where decisions will increase the SOV BTC price. That's Futarchy. Here's how it works. When someone proposes a change to the protocol, two prediction markets are automatically created. These markets let people bet on SOV BTC price will be at some specific point in the future. So for example, market A, vote yes. What will the SOV BTC price if we implement the proposal? And market B, vote no. What will the SOV BTC price be if we don't implement the proposal? Okay, so let's say someone proposes increasing the protocol's trading fees from 0.1 to 0.2. This is how it would work with Futarchy. You create two prediction markets. And a prediction market is basically what people were using to try and predict who is going to be elected president. You know, we've seen quite a lot of success with prediction markets recently. So market A, SOV BTC price on March 7th, 2025, if we increase the fee, SOV BTC price on March 7th, if the fees stay unchanged, and people can take a position in these markets. They can even short one market, they can short market A and buy market B. So the trading starts. After a week of trading, the market A settles that the predicted price is 0.0042 BTC per SOV, and market B believes it's going to be 0.0045 BTC per SOV. And since market B predicts a higher price, the fee increase is automatically rejected. Now, how would we actually use this in principle, in practice? It's a little bit more complicated because figuring out exactly what the time frame around any prediction market should be is a little complicated. But basically, let's say we have a question, right? Should Sovryn launch all of its dApps on a roll-up and invest $1 million from Treasury to do so, right? So we create two prediction markets, one of SOV price if we do that, one of SOV price if we don't do that, and we figure out which is going to be more valuable based on what the market predicts. At that point, there is no voting, which is, I think, a hugely attractive aspect of this. There's much less politicization, and we can actually utilize the free market to make predictions of the future. There's very good empirical evidence that this works, and there are very, very few people who have attempted to do this kind of thing. I think it would be an extremely valuable thing if it worked, but it's definitely not guaranteed to work. Might be a total waste of time. Might be too difficult or complicated to actually make it work. We might invest a lot in it and completely fail, um, and that would suck. Or it might be super exciting and be the future of the way systems get governed, not just decentralized systems, but even companies could use something like this. And then we become very, very valuable. So I like things which have a binary outcome like that. I think this is one of them. I think we should consider it. Blue Monkey says, I suppose the Sovryn Twitter account should not mislead. I'm not sure what he means. Bittercrat says, will we launch the BOS token on Cardano? Maybe. Like maybe Cardano will be one of the places that BOS token becomes available at launch. No decision has been made about that. How would the ideas be formed even before being presented? This is an excellent question. Is one of the challenges. But basically, let's say I have an idea. I go and I create a prediction market. And I say in my prediction market, give me $1 million and I will build this thing. And the prediction market tries to predict whether or not. And I say I'm going to give 10% ownership to Sovryn. And then the prediction market tries to predict whether or not that 10% ownership stake is worth $1 million. That could be one way of doing it. The whole question obviously gets more involved when we get into the execution of this. Is the Cardano integration happening? Yes, we're still working on a Cardano integration at BitcoinOS. All right. So, for example, Blue Monkey says Sovryn will be the first roll-up was stated on the Sovryn Twitter account. This is in response to his thing that the Sovryn Twitter account should not mislead. You know, I'm not sure how to respond to that. Things change. It's good to change your mind when the facts around you change. Consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. It's actually much more. One of the things that Sovryn does poorly is pivot. I think we keep finding ourselves in situations where we will take an experiment. I'll give you an example. Power, right? Sovryn helped launch the Power token. Sovryn, in my mind, Sovryn continues to support Power. In my mind, it shouldn't. Why should it? Um, we should be launching projects and letting them succeed or fail. That is my view. My view is we should be taking big risks and we should be seeing lots of failures. We're not seeing nearly enough failures. I've said this many, many times, but it's just my view.
General, this is T-Bone.
Yes.
Well, my perspective is that we have failed, and we failed a lot.
Sorry?
I think one of the can you hear me?
Yes.
I think one of the frustrations of the community is that things that we talked about doing, we don't tend to follow up and to do them. And that
Yeah.
my example is like right now, the sovereign DEX is not functional for me to use any longer. There are no limit orders. Effectively, there's no spot trading because we don't have any limit orders or an order book. What we have is a record of swap. There's no margin trading because we
Yes.
don't have any limit orders.
Yes.
So it's not effective for the community to use the DEX. I used to use it a lot, but now it's like it's not being maintained. It's just a lot of things that just don't seem to be working. Like even lending, the dollar lending, the whole process is so convoluted that to get money into the real world, it's just not effective at all. It seems like the DEX is like it's almost just being um, put into mothballs. That's what it feels like. And so the community, I'm sure they're like, well, what's going on here? It's like one time we were building this deck and we were actually able to use it. And so we would get fees and rewards or, fees back to
Yep.
the community based upon us using it. We can't even use it anymore. It's not functional.
Mm-hmm. So margin orders were removed because people were losing money. Now, not every project would have done that. Maybe we should have kept them up. The decision was taken that people were losing money because the slippage was greater than what they were anticipating when they were performing trades. And the reason the slippage was greater than what was anticipated was because the liquidity was too low in the AMM. And the reason the liquidity was too low in the AMM is because we basically sucked up all the available liquidity that was available on rootstock, plus brought in more. And because of the way AMMs work, they need very, very deep liquidity. And very few AMMs have managed to achieve that deep liquidity. The only ones that I can think of are Uniswap, SushiSwap, and an aerodrome on base. Maybe also the DEX on Avalanche. But basically, that's it, right? So you need large ecosystems with a lot of capital flowing into them to support constant product type AMMs. Continuing, I think order books are a much better solution. I think CowSwap type DEXs are a much better solution. The way that we did manage to maintain liquidity was by giving out significant SOV rewards. And we wanted to pare those down because people were complaining that the SOV rewards were causing people, market makers, to receive a lot of SOV, which was sold into the market, which reduced the price of SOV. So these were decisions that were made not because Sovryn didn't fulfill its promises. Sovryn did everything that it said it was going to do. More, much more than it said it was going to do. But not but look, frankly, I think a big part of the problem is that we were building in a very, very small ecosystem, which we knew we needed to scale in order to achieve the minimal liquidity thresholds that would make lending liquidity seamless, that would make trading liquidity seamless. We didn't achieve those thresholds. And so we need to build different types of systems which are less constrained by that kind of lack of liquidity. And those systems cannot be built on rootstock.
But
So
now
that just, yeah.
we're on to Bob, which we thought was
Yes,
a better environment.
and we got a bunch of liquidity into Bob DEX, and we became the biggest DEX on Bob, but it was not self-sustaining liquidity because it was there because of the spice points. Um,
The
and
spice
yeah, if you
points
trade
aren't
them,
anything. Spice
yeah.
points is a phantom. That is nothing. I mean, I don't know whether people think it's something, but
Okay,
as
but
far as
what
we
does that
know,
got to do with what does that got to do with us, right? Yes, sure, fine, I agree with you. But uh, the um, the so what? Like for us, that's good,
well,
right?
the
People
point,
come and get
what I'm
hold on.
trying to
People, sorry. I'm gonna finish my sentence. People come and give liquidity, and it doesn't cost Sovereign a damn thing. That's what we wanted, and that's what we got. It created an opportunity for us to test the waters in a different system and potentially, and we grew into the largest DeFi application on Bob. Did we see that reflected in the SRV price? Not really. Why? That's a question that I don't have an answer to, but we can discuss. Look, I'm going to have to jump here because I'm expected on a Spaces now. I have made no effort here in this call. I think you guys have noticed to assure you about anything, to make any promises, or to persuade you about anything. I'm trying to be extremely clear here. My view is we have an extremely big opportunity, which will lead to more extremely big opportunities. That extremely big opportunity is BOS. I think we should handle that opportunity with extreme excitement and caution. We should not fuck it up. Do we need to have a longer term vision for Sovryn beyond that, which is much more concrete? Yes. Do we need to develop it now? We're in the process of developing it. The way we develop that is by having that conversation. We need to be thinking, and in my mind, talking about that future. And do we need to pivot away from things that have not worked in the past? Yes. And are some people going to want us to continue to develop the things that they signed on originally for? Yes. Is right. So we're going to go through now a period of difficult questions that we need to ask and answer ourselves as a community. I'm not going to be able to. Anip is saying don't go. Sorry, Futoko is saying don't go. Stay and talk. I'm already late and I am going to go. But the way that we have this conversation is not through SIPs. It's not through getting angry at the team. It's not through getting angry at the community. It's not through thinking that we're against each other. I think we're all in the same boat and we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to make Sovryn a success.
I don't disagree with you, Yago. And all I would like to say is, if it's possible that we can have another AMA where the community can
Definitely.
truly
I
speak
would
with
be
you
happy. I
and
would be happy to do it. But
sure, I understand you have other
but
commitments.
hold on. Let me just because I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you, but I want to say this. Okay, guys, we're going to have this conversation. We're having it now, but now is not the time to invest in this conversation. The time now is to invest in making Bitcoin OS a success because that's the big unlock. And we need to have a plan for what happens after mainnet launch of Bitcoin OS, say March or April, which is what I currently expect, and I'm not promising. Right? And we have time to have that conversation, but it should be, I don't know, 5% of our time, 10% of our time. Right now, our primary focus should be how do we make Sovryn a success, certainly for the people working on the team. And and yes, let's have another AMA about how we take things forward in the year 2025 and beyond, because I realize that we do need to have a shared vision, and there's a question on how we form that shared vision. And in any event, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here and I'm working. I think we all want to achieve the same things. Sorry, I'm getting cold here for the thing that I need to join. I have to jump. Thank you everyone for your time. I know this was not an easy conversation, not for me and not for you guys, but it's not the end, and it's the beginning. Like I caught. Anyway, all right. I'm extremely.
Why did we
extremely
plan this the same time that you have a Twitter
because
space?
I am extremely busy, and this was
I
the
don't.
only time that we had.
I'll take
Uh,
that.
have a good call, Yago. Have a good call. And
all right,
like I
thank
said,
you
I
guys.
hope that we can get back together. Take care.
Guys,
All
Um,
right, all right.
Victory, are
Thank
you
you very
there?
much, guys.
yeah. Thank you, T-Bone. I
If it's possible that we could, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. So yes, I know that an hour is not in recent community call is not enough to cover everything, especially as we are covering times of change, potential change for the project, and how could that could look like. Um, we will look into scheduling another one next week. Let us discuss and announce it as according to different schedules. Uh,
Did you
Thanks,
discuss
Ray.
power yet?
we did not discuss power. We can discuss
Then
that.
maybe you could lead.
Yeah. Yes. Community member EE and Balea. Sorry, it wasn't Balea. Luca, who are the community members that have Luca is not here. Um, yeah, yeah. Power is to transition its treasury to be in complete control of the community and to be a community-driven coin. The recent ask from the Sovereign team is to give give the token, but 50% of it will be used as to airdrop to different BitcoinOS integration partners communities, and the other 50% of the remaining tokens to be launched as the new Bitcoin token standard that Sovryn is developing. So for the first proposal, yes, good idea. For the second proposal, also very good idea. It can be done with technical assistance from the Sovryn team in due time, meaning obviously first the token needs to be developed and launched, token standard. The only thing missing from that proposal is a USDT or dollar budget that you need for different activities. I have not received that yet. Once that is delivered and complete, the funds can transfer.
Well, French, it's T-Bone again.
Hey.
I think that a lot of us, we do kind of agree that right now the focus should be on boss. But the problem with the community is we don't know what boss is. The same way that we didn't know with Bob that we was going to get Spice that was, this phantom reward, So it's hard for us to go into a direction when everything is so vague. And I understand that the concept is incomplete, but the community still needs to have more information of what's going on, what's the direction, what's the potential outcome, what's the end goal. Other than we just want to make this a success. We've heard that from Power, from Mint, from every project that we've launched. Dollar, and even like with Dollar, I mean, and I'm trying to stay with focus with Boss, but the fact of the matter is the past, products that we've launched, they just haven't panned out. They didn't turn out the way that they were sold to us, or what the exchequer or leadership thought they would be. Um, So for us to go on with Boss now, it's like we feel like we're all back in the same position. Here we're being, spun this story, and we don't know what the outcome of it's going to be. I mean, even the basic idea of, well, we're going to get some rewards. There's something other than some phantom spice. That is, what is that? So we're just trying to not let that happen again. We're trying to see what is truly the outcome of this, as opposed to we got to make boss work. Okay, we need to make boss work. But what does the community get out of it? What does Sovryn get out of it, of making boss work? You know, um, that other than some tokens, and that could be phantom as well. If it doesn't really bring any true value to Sovryn, and just because somebody says it brings value, that's what was said about the spice when it got our treasury to our adoption fund to move it over to Bob. And it was a phantom reward. So I think the community deserves to have some concrete information about where we're going, what to expect. I think that's only fair as opposed to just bringing us along with a hope and a prayer. So
Who has
Hope-
the answers?
I don't think anyone has the answers. Look, Timo and I and everyone, I hear you. It's better to have certainty than uncertainty. It's better to know what spice is than guesstimate what spice is and being unsure where this is going. But uh, Bob can't give you certainty about spice. At least they didn't give me anything, but what it is and how it will translate into anything. And they didn't give this to anyone. I don't know how Spice will pan out, and I don't. But I do disagree. I disagree with that it's a phantom reward, because we don't know what the reward is yet.
I mean, the
And
reward is likely an airdrop, right? Like every other project you see right now, they're giving airdrops. I mean, well,
yeah,
it's not that hard to understand. It's going to be airdrop down the line. I don't know why people stuck on this too much. It's okay, we try something there. Maybe it's a big airdrop, maybe it's not, but you're going to get something in there.
I think so too, but I got no. I mean, they never said anywhere that they're giving a token. I would assume they're giving a token. Um,
And that's fine, and all that's fine. But before we went over to Bob, at least if the community had that information that it was going to be spiced with a possible airdrop in the future,
I think it's
that
legal things. They can't say it. That's why.
yeah. So what
what
are you saying, Tibor?
possible,
You want to
possible.
know? You want to know how much the boss token would be valued? I don't know. I don't think anyone can give you this information. It that doesn't exist yet.
But
Well,
just
and
to
that,
backtrack a little bit, just to ask, why was the community initiative about power? I just want to know, like, because we never heard anything from the team regarding anything about this. I just want to know, like, what's the
This was
thought
discussed.
process? Why?
Sure, sure. This was discussed in the Power Rangers group with the community. I asked for members to step up and take control over the project. A few did, and this process is currently being managed by Luca from the Sovereign core contributors side. But the goal here is to have the meme to be fully community driven. This means
Yeah, but why? Is there any benefit to it?
the benefit is that memes are community driven, and this needs to be picked up and driven by the community.
Okay, because look like the price suffered from that decision.
Um, I don't know what the price suffered from that decision in particular.
So that was the decision you made, or someone else, or?
It's not exactly a decision. It's a proposal, and I do expect it to bring it up to a vote.
okay, well, I don't know, if we're going to be discussing this any further, or we're going to come back again later and try and discuss some of these things. Um,
What was
my
said today,
big,
by the way? I joined late. Maybe T-Bone, if you can. Did they answer anything about everything about? Because
Yeah,
this looks like there was an early call today. You said this time, but then they pushed it up an hour. Maybe because he had to go to some Twitter
yeah.
meeting.
The it's he's on a space. I think you can join and listen to him now. This call was recorded. It will be published on YouTube shortly. We will arrange for another community call next week.
okay. That'd be great. And hopefully, we'll have some more of the community members chime in. I think some of this stuff really needs to be thrashed out or hashed out at least. And I understand that there's no certainty with anything, but at least we have some idea of where we're going, what we're trying to do. My big concern, like when I listen to Yago's talking about, making an index fund for these shit coins, it just sounds a lot more like Terra Luna to me, and I don't know how we sit up and um, measure our value in a shitcoin. It'd be one thing if our treasury was Bitcoin, but it's a whole nother thing when we're talking about a shitcoin. That basically only has the value that the community gives it, and that can change on a dime.
Power.
So
I understand your concern, Yvonne.
yeah, but
Let's
anyway,
get
I'll look forward. Yeah, I'll look forward to the next AMA, and hopefully we can get more community members to chime in. I'd like to hear people. I'd like to hear their voices and what they really feel and what they think. Um, we have a lot of community members that Um, I mean, you see in the dojo. I mean, I can't even keep up with it. It's just 300, 100. Um,
okay. Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
fully
if I was community, it'd be good if we were all on the same page. Seems like there's two camps: the boss camp and the sovereign camp.
David, you got cut off for me, so I couldn't understand what you said. But Tibon, I fully agree with you. We definitely have should more people speak up in their voice. That's just makes things nicer.
Because I think like that we have some really smart community members. I mean, I'm amazed with some of their ideas and their views and stuff. And um, I really would like to hear them. And maybe it might impress some on the leadership, the exchequer community, and it would help. So, but I look forward to the next call, and I appreciate you hanging around, French, and hearing us out.
Thank you, Timo. Thank you, everybody. Let's bring this call to a close.
Okay,
See you next week.
bye bye.